Bless Unleashed is a free-to-play MMO developed by NeoWiz Games and Roommate Studio. The game released, or should I say re-released, in 2021, as the game started life as Bless Online in 2018. However, after failing to gain traction, the servers were shut down just over a year later. After teaming up with a new studio and arming themselves with a console version, the game was rebooted for PC's Steam release in August 2021. And despite doubters still expecting a flop, the game's player base has been surprising critics with over 71,000 concurrent players just after launch, and the game's still pulling in between 30 to 40,000 active players in the more recent weeks. Is history set to repeat itself with the game limping along to another inevitable closing of its servers? Or are the reports of much more promising player counts an indication that Bless Unleashed this time has something truly worthwhile on offer? My name's Mitch Mannix, and today we take what ended up being quite a lengthy first look at Bless Unleashed. First of all, I'd like to quickly mention that this video is not sponsored in any way or coming with any particular agenda. I will not be trying to convince anyone to play the game, nor will I be needlessly bashing on it either. Just the facts and my thoughts. After downloading and booting up for the first time, I can't help but notice the game's clever use of the word average, listed as an indicator on how populated the EU server space is. As, what is average? Is it 6,000? Is it 600? Is it 4? One can only hope that average is enough. The game begins like many RPGs with a tutorial section, where you play as a high-level and geared version of yourself, running through the game's core combat mechanics. Akin to games such as Black Desert Online or Terra, Bless Unleashed's combat is more action combo-centric compared to more traditional offerings, complete with dodge rolling and target lock-on. I must admit that although I have spent time with MMOs that adopt this style of combat, I cannot say that I prefer this more combo-centric system over the more slow traditional style. But it has to be said that Bless did at times show me how the faster-paced combat can help blend the character building of an MMO with the more engaging combat of an action RPG. More on that a little later in the video. With the tutorial complete, I awake on Tellerian Island to begin the game proper. It's here that I start to see that this is a fairly good-looking MMO when it comes to its visuals. High-quality lighting and textures, mixed in with densely packed city streets, sets the scene nicely, with some good use of the Unreal 3 engine. After embarrassing myself in front of the locals and terrorizing some children, the game introduces me to some of the key characters of the story, and the big bad is presented again, whisking me off to the mainland to begin the real exploration. Now in Karzakor, the true leveling experience begins. This consists of various side quests, world bosses, and regional events that go along with making my way through the main story arc. Each of these is clearly identifiable with times for regional quests and world bosses to reduce the amount of players standing around for extended periods of time waiting for spawns. World bosses in particular stood out as a highlight, as while working through to level 28, I found most were quite unique, and not only in style, but also had bespoke mechanics and attack patterns to keep things interesting. Another positive from these open world encounters was the difficulty. A lot of the world bosses aren't messing around and pack quite a punch, and are not afraid to throw some quite nasty abilities out, requiring some quick reaction dodging as well as looking for that perfect moment to strike. This was a nice thing to see, as in some titles, world bosses more often than not boil down to a bunch of players all gathering up and spamming the attack of their choice, knowing that they are quite safe from any real danger due to the sheer player numbers. Even with 20 plus players joining the fray, most world encounters in Bless will still need you to be on your toes, and do a great job keeping you engaged. Bless uses a channel hopping feature to allow you to quickly phase into another server instance. This gives the player more of a chance of catching a fight with a certain boss out in the world, but can feel a little clunky moving to a location and just spamming this until you finally catch a pull. Both the world bosses and regional quests give out quite a hefty amount of player experience, but are on cooldown once completed to stop constant farming of the same type of content, a move that I feel on the surface could irritate players. But it did make me venture out and explore the world, and I feel the game is better for it. Side quests, however, give such a small amount of experience that they become totally unviable for effective leveling. A strange situation when such thought has gone into the balancing of rewards of the other open world content to see the side quests so throwaway in comparison. As you level, you'll be granted rewards in the way of new gear, as well as food items, currency, and boosters. The gearing is simple and easy to understand, and its acquisition plentiful through leveling, with further customization and enhancing options coming up later in the levels for those that want to min-max. My quick look into this showed me that there's a very BDO style upgrade system with the chance of failure to bear in mind. Bless offers additional group PvE content in the ways of 2 and 5 player arena style encounters with a single opponent, as well as 5-man larger scale multi-encounter instances with trash mobs. These are great for grabbing a new piece of gear, but don't really stand out in particular, as the arenas for example just feel like scaled down versions of the game's world boss events. The 5-man dungeons do not follow any form of Holy Trinity format of healers, tanks and DPS, which can lead to things feeling a little bit chaotic, as well as not really doing anything to make you feel connected with the players in the group, further adding to the feeling that you could have gotten the same experience doing any number of the open world encounters. You may have seen by now that I rolled a sword and board class, the Crusader. It's worth mentioning that although this class uses a shield and has class abilities to buff defense and block attacks, there's no real aggro table, nor any real reason to tank in this game from what I've seen. Couldn't help but feel a little short-changed after speaking with some players to find out that not only are some of my class abilities quite useless for PvE, but also that overall the Crusader loses out when compared to others when it comes to DPS, I imagine due to this. Hopefully some changes will be made in the future to make this class more viable. Later down the line you can choose to join one of 3 unions, overarching player guilds for PvE, PvP and crafters, that come with their own chat channels, daily quests and even abilities. You can only be a member of one of these unions at any given time, but you can leave and join another after a short couple of quests. Although a nice idea, I feel like this system may run into becoming an inconvenience for those that want to be involved with a little bit of everything from time to time. In all, there is a fair amount of variety to keep you busy in between the main storyline missions, with the union system in particular adding a huge amount of content later down the leveling journey. As you level, you'll also unlock blessings. There are a set of buffs applied to your character that favour a specific playstyle. They can be upgraded and help to add a bit of variety, but in my opinion aren't as impactful for a system that the game puts so much focus on, as well as being its namesake. The few instanced PvP matches I played were good fun, but the combat did feel quite cumbersome. There's definitely some fun to be had here, but in my opinion, with only a few abilities and the non-existent matchmaking options, didn't feel as deep or as long-lasting as titles such as BDO or even ESO. The instance content does unfortunately fall quite flat, especially when stacked up next to the game's world boss encounters that are well designed and a lot of fun to get stuck into. Crafting and professions in Bless feels a little like they're following the MMO Painting by Numbers guidebook, which is both a good and a bad thing. Gear can be broken down at a fireplace for some reason, and the player can craft and upgrade their skills in professions such as blacksmithing, woodworking and alchemy. The player will earn crafting experience for each crafted item, with further development possible after reaching max level by completing mastery quests. Recipes can be obtained in a number of ways, including from treasure chests, monster drops and dungeon rewards. Crafting supplies are found from nodes around each of the game's zones, as well as rarer variants being given as rewards and drops from additional activities. Although feeling quite standard, there's a few nice touches here. Food can be made and shared at a soul pyre fireplace for you and other adventurers to use and gain HP and temporary buffs. The crafting side of things also has its own questline, as well as its own unique union to join, and in all ticks a lot of the core boxes for this type of content without adding too much to the table in terms of innovation or depth. One thing I found that held back the crafting and gathering experience was the bag capacity, which after spending a few days in the game suddenly fell dramatically, leading me to storing some items in a tiny bank space that you're given, as well as selling and even throwing away some items, just to get under the 60 slot limit that I had now, down from 100. This drop, after some investigation, was my first tussle with some of the design choices linked to the game's free-to-play model. Bless Unleashed is a free-to-play game. You can download it and boot it up right now for no cost. But with a free-to-play MMO comes the requirement for the publishers and developers to generate income from in-game purchases. Bless offers cosmetics such as armor, mounts and outfits, currencies such as in-game gold and star seeds, along with boosters to all types of experience gain, and of course the aforementioned expansions to both bank and personal inventory space. Players can opt into Premium Time, the game's optional sub, that gives bonuses to all types of experience gain, bag space, as well as discounts on the marketplace and NPC stores. In my time with the game up to level 28, the two things that stood out the most when the new player Premium Time dropped off was the slowing in XP gain and the bag space, dropping down to between 50 to 60 spaces for all your consumables, crafting materials, as well as your weapons, armor and bless tokens, coupled with the tiny amount of space given to you for your bank storage, can really impact the crafting and gathering side in particular. I found myself not eager to farm mobs or hides, or mine rocks and materials, as I knew it would just add to filling up an already hard to manage inventory shuffle. Bag space can be acquired as you level, slowly, by handing in a repeatable quest for 4 bag fragments that are scattered all across the zones, so the inventory space issue can be somewhat overcome with time played, and I did not really find the drop in XP gain to be that much of a big deal, considering the game has quite a wide array of XP granting activities to get involved with. The fact that the world boss encounters were so much fun almost made the slowing of leveling a good thing, as I stuck around to finish most zone bosses multiple times before moving into new areas. I was expecting to hit more walls with the free-to-play model myself, but something to bear in mind is that this was during leveling. From the research that I've done, after reaching level 30 the game unflags world PvP by default, and can only be reinstated temporarily with an item sold in the game's store. Star Seeds, one of the game's in-game currencies, becomes more relevant. This can be earned in small amounts in the game, but also through the cash shop. Star Seeds can be used to help increase the chances of the previously mentioned BDO style upgrade system. I can definitely start to see how the pay-to-win argument starts to come into play with the endgame, being able to buy some of the best gear, as well as upgrading it with a currency purchasable with real money. Bless Unleashed did exceed my expectations, especially with all the negativity around the media covering the game. The world is vast and sometimes incredibly presented. From dark spider caves to some truly incredible looking cities and architecture, I sometimes thought that it was such a shame that such design and talent had been marred by the game's past and present issues and reputation. A reputation that unfortunately seems to be feeding into a self-fulfilling prophecy. As more potential players think that it's doomed to fail, the less people will play it, dooming it to fail. Combat, although sometimes clunky feeling, does give way to some epic fast-paced battles against interesting and diverse world bosses. Most of the bare essentials for a good MMO are here, and some are executed really well. You can even catch and train your own mounts, and own your own land with hired workers, but some of what Bless offers just feels disappointing when stacked next to its popular competition in the MMO genre. The world, although visually impressive, is frequently ruined with disjointed voice lines from NPCs that look out of place and even cross-eyed. The story lacks depth and is told poorly throughout, with no real character development or interesting personalities. The story does not feel like an epic adventure, more like a story stapled to a primary school classroom wall, and it feels like the same story beats from the cutscenes on the starter island are simply repackaged and told again and again. Bless Unleashed is not a total failure at all. If you get a couple of friends together and jump in, you will be amazed with the amount of content and great moments you can get from adventuring through this free-to-play game. Bless Unleashed is also not a game that I would advise going in with the mind to expect to play for years to come, for a number of reasons. The endgame is reportedly fraught with polarizing opinions on pay-to-win and the impact of the monetization. And perhaps the most relevant of all is that the game has had issues with player numbers in the past, and although the player counts on the surface look better, the zone channels are almost always showing as low, and it's worth bearing in mind that this is a developer that has failed to reach its expected player counts in the past and pulled the plug on the whole operation. I just couldn't in my right mind ignore the possibility of that happening again here, unless things really pick up. If you and a few mates are looking to try something new, to get stuck into some fast-paced open-world combat and explore a beautiful land together, Bless Unleashed is a great option to consider. It almost feels like it was a shame that it was released as an MMO, as opposed to a multiplayer team-based action game, as Bless does a lot well, but when held up to industry standards for MMO features, falls behind. My closing thoughts would be, if you're looking for a change of scene and have a couple of friends to jump into some great open world PvE engagements with MMO styled gear progression, then give this game a look while you still can. Just don't quite yet look at it as the genre defining long standing IP, as its future still hangs in the balance. And that's my first impressions of Bless Unleashed. It was a challenge to cover this one, as there are some really great things on offer here, especially since it's free to play. We'll just have to wait and see what happens over the next few months with it. Thank you again for all the new subs over the last couple of weeks. It truly means a lot to me that you guys are enjoying the content. On that note, I typically get a new video out every few days, with the max being about a week. But the next video, I have to say, is quite ambitious, and if I'm honest, it may take a few more days to get to you, but I want to do it right and make it the best that I can make it. I'm really excited about it and want it to be perfect. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like, as it really helps me out. And why not check out some more videos on the channel? If you're enjoying the content, subscribe to be notified of the new videos going live. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Love you guys. See you in the next one.